can go ahead and call the Budget and Public Employees Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Aldred. Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Aldred. We have 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have just one item on our agenda here this morning, and that is Board Bill Number 1, the city's budget. Before us today, we will have Sarah Russell from the City Emergency Management System to start us off today, and then we will be hearing from SLDC, the Sheriff's Office, and this afternoon, we will have a public hearing off-site.
I'm sorry, Chair Spencer, but we do have the approval of the minutes on the agenda.
Okay, thank you so much. We have approval, let's see, which minutes do we have? Several here today. Thank you for this reminder. We have approval of minutes from Monday, May 22nd, Tuesday, May 23rd, Wednesday, May 24th. Altogether, I will accept a motion to accept the meeting minutes from those 3 previous meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Aye. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Aldred. Chair Spencer. We have 4 aye votes.
Aye. Okay. And with that, let's go ahead and hear from our first speaker up today,
Sarah Russell.
Sarah Russell from the City Emergency Management Agency. Sarah, welcome. As a reminder, we're asking everybody to speak in the microphone and introduce yourself, especially for the folks at home.
Sure, thank you. Sarah Russell, I'm the Commissioner of Emergency Management, a division of the Department of Public Safety for the City of St. Louis.
Thank you, Sarah. Do you want to go ahead and, do you have any materials for us, or did you want to go ahead and maybe give us an overview? Why don't we just start with this, an overview of the department that you oversee? I know that you're going to be looking at some serious upgrades and some investments this year, so if you could go ahead and just give the committee a broad overview of the work you oversee at the department and what we're planning to do there.
Certainly. So the city's emergency management agency is the primary for disaster planning for the city of St. Louis. Emergency management concerns itself with preparedness, prevention, mitigation, response, and recovery. Those are the subject matter areas where we take the lead for the city as far as planning, getting reimbursements when we are inside of a disaster, and coordinating not only city departments, but also partner agencies and community organizations to ensure a streamlined and equitable response and recovery process. So a very large mission area, relatively small agency, but we are very mighty when we have to be. We have a lot of good partners, both inside with our city department liaisons as well as in the community. So relationships is a key function that we play, both in blue skies and in gray skies. As well as maintaining the city's emergency operations center, which is where everyone with the decision-making authority will meet during a disaster incident to make decisions, make sure everybody's on the same page and that we're heading towards the common goal, which our first priority, of course, is life safety in the city. We also maintain the city's emergency response command post vehicle, unified command vehicle, designation EMA-1, which is a large vehicle that can be used, as we saw starting in last July, for business continuity. It was deployed to house some street department staff when their office became unusable because of the flash flooding. It is also used as a forward operating unified command post during special events in the city. You can see it at some of our larger events, such as Mardi Gras, Pride, and a number of other special events. It can also be utilized for incidents. Obviously, we can deploy it to any manner of incidents as needed by our partner agencies to have a place to operate out of in the field. Those are some of the primary things that we do. We also are responsible for public alerting and warning within the city of St. Louis, and that is something that we will certainly talk about today. Part of that program is the outdoor warning siren system that we've talked about in years past for quite some time, and looking forward to that conversation continuing into the next budget. And it also includes Notify STL, which is the tool that's powered by Everbridge that allows us to issue emergency alerts and recovery and response information using cell phones, landlines, email, text message, and any other function you could possibly imagine. It will fax people if they want to get information to people. So again, that tool is relatively new. We're about 4 years into that. We have a great deal of capability with reaching not only residents, but visitors to the city of St. Louis, those who work in the city and those who have businesses with important emergency information. It was utilized during COVID several times, not just by SEMA, but also we are expanding to other departments being able to use it. The health department, as an example, was able to leverage it to remind people for booster shots if they receive vaccination through one of the health clinics for vaccination. So we are expanding that also for internal use to be used not only in times of emergency alerts and warning, but also to notify internal stakeholders if there is an incident in a city building, if there is inclement weather to report, early closing, late start type of information, and other vital pieces of information. Expanded use has been extended to the Department of Human Services as we look to transition the Access and Functional Needs Registry, call down process and database within the system. And we are in the process of adding additional portals for public safety departments to be used internally as well. Those are kind of our hot spots right now. We are also very involved in the planning process for the new Public Safety Answering Point and Emergency Operations Center, which is being designed to be built near fire headquarters up near Cass and Jefferson. So that's another project that's very near and dear to my heart as, our staff has grown a little bit in the past number of years, and we're running out of office space. So we have some people that don't have offices. That's kind of just a quick snapshot. We could go on and on for a very long time. Of course, we're still managing the flood recovery from flash flooding in July 2022, where I got to see Alderwoman Boyd many times, and my alderman, Alderman Narayan, in his previous ward, still part of his current ward, for some of the hardest hit areas from that flooding. So that process will go on. 2 of our staff members are taking the lead on that while I've been focused on a grant process related to the same. We divide and conquer, and right now they're working to get back as much money as we can get reimbursed from our losses internally for city infrastructure and staffing during that incident.
Thank you, Sarah. If you could, just on the budget side, typically the office has had a budget between 500 and 800,000, it looks like. This fiscal year, the request was 1.4 million, but the proposed budget is 4.6. It looks like there's a $400,000 investment from the economic development sales tax. If you could talk about what it is that we're going to be doing with that, with those funds, and why the request and the proposed amount are so very different.
Certainly. So the economic development sales tax funding, for the past number of years, we've received $100,000, and that money goes to pay for the Notify STL tool, so the digital mass notification solution that we have in place. This year, we do have approximately $3.9 million that is in the budget, and that is funding to replace the outdoor warning siren system. We've had a lot of conversation on that system, both internally and with our, residents across the city with concerns because of the age and the functionality of that system. I know I've talked about it for several years, and my predecessor talked about it for many years before that. The system is now about 23 years old, and according to the manufacturer, the usable lifespan, if it's well maintained, is 15 years. So we're well outside of the usable lifespan of the system. And people do still rely on it. We've got a lot of feedback from people, both pro and con sirens. But we know that there are a number of people, so we really have decided to prioritize replacing that system. And that will see us through about the next 15 years at least. And my thought is also, we're seeing so much change with technology. The Notify STL tool is one case in point, but with the advancement in technology, it's likely going to be a much different landscape when we look 15, 20 years down the line at what the capabilities and possibilities are for warning people across the city.
Thank you, Sarah. So that 4 million is for the siren replacement. When you came before Ways and Means, back when it was Ways and Means, you indicated that investing in that system may not be the best return on city taxpayer dollars. Can you help us understand kind of maybe what has shifted? It's an outdated system, and the amount of money that we're going to be putting into a system that, as you pointed out, is outdated and takes a lot of funds.
Right. There's a lot that goes into it, of course. And we did look at other similar municipalities and what they're doing. There are quite a few that do still use sirens. There was only a few that I was able to see that had removed sirens from service and opted not to replace them. I think by and large, the reasoning for deciding to, request funding and go the route of replacing the siren was just the sheer number of residents that asked for that. The number of people that still rely on that system as a method of warning and notification. I don't always agree with, the stake that they put into it. Their want that it should wake them up in the middle of the night in their bedroom, in their, insulated in some way home that in some cases is designed to keep noise out. That's never been a guarantee of this system. I've gone to the library, I've looked back, and I, have seen this as an outdoor warning siren. It really is designed to reach those who are outdoors. And honestly, we have a number of events, a number of public spaces that are outdoors, and it just makes sense to go through this process one more time to ensure that we're doing everything that we can to reach people when they need it the most. And that was really the reasoning behind that.
Thank you for that. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. Alderwoman Boyd.
There's none left. She asked all the questions. Thank you for coming before us. I was listening to you with the technology, and you all have grown in regards to notifying people, and you go back as far as the flood, but I go back as far as maybe a month ago, we had a tornado and it was real interesting because my granddaughter was doing her senior dance, and they heard the sirens, and they got the text, and they wound up in Union Station in the tornado tunnel. So that's a good thing. I think that's good. And then you all do make it where people should respond back to say, I received this text. And so I think that's taken us to another level. I think my concern is, as it's always been, as a city, nobody looked at maintenance for our city. And so it's from infrastructure to the emergency piece to the water. And so now we're trying to play catch up to get the city, as old as we are, where they need to be. And I think that's embarrassing, because what you do is very urgent And so you all don't have the room to not have the dollars or the space to make sure that people are notified. And I was really surprised when I heard that, and it made sense, that you work with, when people have parades and stuff. And so that's something to think about, you know, and I don't think the police and you, I don't think it's two entities people look to have at these meetings when you're sponsoring parades or activities outside, because you all are the piece that can help them be successful and everybody be safe. So I applaud you, what you're doing, since you have been in this position. I have seen a lot of positive that has come out of it. And I see you trying to take your department to another level. What's interesting is you're the first person that came forth and said, we don't have offices for employees. Because usually it's the other way around. We don't have employees and we have offices. So that's a good thing. So, you know, I applaud you for the work that you're doing. And you were very instrumental when it flooded in our area, that you came with the team. And so, and it woke a lot of residents up because they didn't even know the avenues that they could go to get assistance. So thank you for what you're doing, and keep up the good work. I just think you're the quiet storm that nobody knows about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It is a pleasure, despite the subject matter, to be able to, you know, go out in those cases and be that voice to bring information to people in all parts of the city. You did highlight a lot of the challenges we do have. I will say that I recently hired someone, and I felt good being, again, kind of the weird one. I didn't have an issue hiring people. Emergency management is a field that is I think seeing a lot of growth and a lot of expansion to having a more diverse workforce. And I had to make a really difficult choice between very great candidates. So if we are given the opportunity to fill roles and expand our agency, we really don't have a shortage in finding good people to do that, and that's very fortunate. That is also to say that business is good in disasters and emergencies. And I think we see a lot of people that are, you know, see what happens in the news in other areas. And it runs everything from cybersecurity, emerging threats, active shooter incidents, more natural weather-related incidents, and earthquakes to draw people's attention and get them interested in engaging with us. And we have to capitalize on that. It's just difficult with the staff that we have to be able to do that on the scale that I would like to see. But with some of the benefits that we've had through recent budgets and support from different groups, it's been really exciting to see the way that we're changing to meet the needs.
Thank you so much.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No question. Thank you, sir.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For the line about salaries for regular employees, I see the budget request at 627 and the budget proposed at 194. Did we discuss that already?
We did not.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about what that difference is?
Sure. So since I came into the role, I came in the middle of the last budget cycle and kind of picked up where my predecessor left off. But it's my belief that I need to show and ask for what is needed to do the job. So that number in my request reflects what I think we need to get to effectively do the work that we are responsible for the city of St. Louis. And that mostly is in the form of additional emergency management specialists. The title says it, it's a specialist. We have one in the emergency management agency. I believe the health department has 3 and possibly an opening. And, you know, the airport has one, and it's difficult to see that and try to push this forward, knowing that we have many areas where we could really utilize additional staff to be able to actually specialize in these different mission areas and processes for emergency management. Logistics, making sure that the stuff we have is ready and we can move it. planning, being able to do the plans for the city buildings, for the city as a whole, for different task forces and specific needs across our community. We're always in a very reactive posture, and emergency management needs to be proactive, at least a couple of steps ideally. And that is a real challenge for us. But having additional specialists would enable us to have a single, at least one point person that could be a liaison to higher education, a liaison to voluntary organizations active in disaster, hospital and health systems, religious and faith-based organizations, so that we're able to more adequately maintain those relationships and enact them whenever we need to. That was a hard part during the flooding. Typically, myself and Valerie Russell have been liaisons to our voluntary organizations active in disaster across the region. Whenever that happened, we were both heavily tasked and were not as able to interact with those groups. The benefit is we've had that relationship for a long time. We have trusted relationships. We know what they're going to do. It worked out for us to be a little more hands-off. It wasn't for an emergency manager. I wasn't comfortable with that. I wanted to be able to call and reach out and have regular contact with them instead of just putting out whatever fire might arise. So that's where that depth looks primarily as emergency management specialist. There was a request for a GIS and I believe it's graphic design role as well. And that really is so that we can better use the available data for the city to be able to utilize it in our planning and in our recovery and response programs, as well as to better build out our capabilities as far as doing damage assessments. If you recall, during the flood, we sent a lot of people out with clipboards, pens and paper to go door to door and collect information. And then we had to wait for the end of the day when they brought all of that back and people were typing it into our database systems. We have technology that can make that more real time. If we're able to develop this system, we can automatically upload that back into the EOC and start to make decisions more quickly and have a better sense of what the damage assessment is from earlier on. It took us a long time to pull data from different sources and kind of crunch that together to see more closely what the actual impact of that incident was.
And I'd be curious, I'm sorry, I would be curious if the data that you had collected, who was impacted the most? I would just be curious to see that data, to see, okay, in my area, who actually was impacted and who actually was served. And that was a big issue with me. And I think, too, is because in our community, and I'm thinking back from when I was in the work field, we always had you all at our facilities and we would do a disaster training. And so I think in our communities, what happens, people don't have the disaster training. And so even do a mock for a community, a mock disaster, would help them to see things differently because they're not prepared and they don't know what to do. And I think they're in a panic mode. So I would just be interested to learn, how many people were assisted and how many people had devastating damages. Because I was out there in it, so I knew what was going on. When you pushing dumpsters back into the alleys from the floods and all this craziness. And so I'm just like, okay, so how many people actually were impacted from that?
Right.
Yeah.
I will tell you, this was a very unique incident, and we do have maps that show people being impacted from the farthest north point of the city all the way to the farthest south. So certainly a very wide-reaching, and it wasn't necessarily every house, and every house wasn't necessarily, catastrophic damage. But any amount of damage, one of the things that I saw on the ground was talking to people going door to door, and some people that were reluctant to say we were affected. Their take was, my house isn't that bad, you need to go help, you know, someone down the block. But what we really wanted to be able to grasp was just that sheer number of people that were affected. I don't care if your laundry room was flooded, you know, that's still impact to me. That's still something we need to collect so that we can use that to plan for future and to help with our recovery numbers.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, did you have further questions?
Thank you. Those were my main questions. I'm excited about the siren replacement outdoors. I get a lot of emails and texts about that from folks in my areas. I know we've communicated about that, and I really appreciate you staying on that. I know how hard it is for departments to have to always ask over and over and over again for the things they need, but I mean, I think we certainly appreciate it when you do. So thank you so much for being here and all you do for our city. Appreciate it.
Alderwoman Saunier,
No questions at this time.
Alderman Aldrich.
Thank you, no questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to echo with gratitude for all the work you do, and in particular with the budget. Outlining what your department needs is not something that we see very often. We often are kind of budgeting for what we are expecting the department to be on the receiving end of. And that doesn't really result in a full understanding of what a department needs to function as optimally as possible. And so even though obviously this is a stretch and, you know, I think, you know, your proposed budget is in line with last year's budget, educating this committee and residents as a whole about what emergency management system can and should look like with a budget request that reflects your needs is really, really helpful for us. So I appreciate you putting that together. With that, I echo some gratitude on just all the work, again, that you do. And with that, seeing no more questions from the committee, we'll conclude your testimony here before the Budget and Public Employees Committee. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll take a small recess. We are expecting to hear from SLDC at 11. Okay, the Budget and Public Employees meeting is going to be called back to order. Resume. This afternoon, we have SLDC before us, Neil Richardson, and after that, we have the Sheriff's Office. So with that, we have a presentation from SLDC. Neil, thank you so much for being here with us. As we all know, SLDC is a separate entity. You can talk about that a little bit, you know, how it's funded, how it's separate. We are not approving your budget as part of Board Bill 1, but we do appreciate you coming before us again this year to just educate the committee on how that structure is. And if you don't mind, I'm reminding everybody just to introduce themselves and to speak into the microphone for folks at home. Thank you, Neil.
Sure. Thank you, Chairwoman Spencer, and thank you to the Budget and Public Employees Committee for the opportunity to present an overview of the St. Louis Development Corporation, as we are the economic development arm for the city of St. Louis specifically. And we work very closely with the Board of Aldermen, most prominently with the Housing and Urban Development and Zoning Committee, where we bring forth some of the larger development projects that are seeking whether incentives and abatements or other support, and making sure that we align with the visions and goals of economic development activity of the city of St. Louis through the Board of Aldermen and also through the Mayor's Office and the Comptroller's Office. So again, appreciate the opportunity. Today, I would like to give an overview of who SLDC is, what we are not, and ways in which we are collaborating and partnering with the city of St. Louis in order to implement the American Rescue Plan Act and execute on the Economic Justice Action Plan. So SLDC is the independent economic development agency serving the city of St. Louis. It is an action-oriented organization that exists to empower, develop, and transform the city through a more vibrant, just, and growing economy where all people can thrive. We see ourselves operating in 3 core pillars of economic empowerment, equitable and inclusive development, and neighborhood transformation. When we talk about amplification and empowerment, it's amplifying the voices of the people, businesses, and neighborhoods in which we serve. We also are talking about development. How do we invest in and strengthen community infrastructure, as well as ensuring that we're giving transparency, consistency, and accountability to the overall development process through the city of St. Louis. We actually work on neighborhood transformation, actualizing just and equitable economic opportunities for all of the city to thrive. And in order for us to achieve these goals, over the last 2 years since I've been in my role as the Chief Executive Officer for St. Louis Development Corporation, it was important for us to have some key core values for how we operate. We are people first. We center and engage the people and communities we serve as co-creators. We are collaborative partners. We recognize, value, and leverage teammates and partners' unique skill sets and contributions to the work. We are inclusive, committing to creating a culture that celebrates and draws strength from our differences. We make our decisions in a data-informed approach, making strategic decisions informed by holistic data and not just one data point. We center equity in all that we do, providing people what they need from where they are. We are empathetic, striving to understand and be responsive to their needs. Accountability, honoring our commitments to the city and the stakeholders we serve within the city of St. Louis. And ultimately, we aim to be as transparent as possible in all of our practices, shedding light on the work we do and provide opportunities for the public to follow our progress. SLDC is a multifaceted economic development organization. We are charged with igniting investment that generates generational prosperity for all St. Louis's. We focus on 4 key areas: neighborhood and community transformation, real estate development, industry and business development, minority and small business empowerment support. These areas of focus allows us to stimulate the market for private investment for the city's real estate, activating land and buildings to generate income by creating a tax base, assembling properties and managing them to dispose of vacant land, stabilizing neighborhoods, turning perceived liabilities into assets that work for our city, and we staff several development boards to help us achieve this, but more specifically in the area of real estate development, the Land Reutilization Authority, which is the St. Louis Land Bank, the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority, the Planned Industrial Expansion Authority, and then also through industry and business development, we create excitement by working with business communities to support economic empowerment activities for our women and small minority-owned businesses to thrive. We also are focused on creating a more vibrant and affordable and living neighborhoods where everyone, no matter what area of the city, whether it's North St. Louis City, South St. Louis City, or in the Central Corridor and downtown, that you should feel safe and have the opportunity to live, work, and play within your neighborhoods. And finally, I want to talk about our development boards. SLDC is an umbrella nonprofit agency of 501c4 that houses and professionally staffs the development boards that facilitate and regulate development and capital investment within the city of St. Louis. As you can see on this slide, there are 9 development boards that we are responsible for managing: the Clean Energy Development Board, the Enhanced Enterprise Zone Board, the Industrial Development Authority, the Land Clearance for Redevelopment Authority, LRA, the St. Louis Local Development Company, which is responsible for providing loans to small businesses and communities working through federal, state, and local programs, our Planned Industrial Expansion Authority, the Port Authority, which oversees many aspects of public and private real estate development in the Port District, including mooring leases, as well as working on the TIF Commission. Again, our staff, each one of these development boards is made up of volunteer directors and members. And our staff provides recommendations and the necessary backup and support for each one of these development boards to make decisions on behalf of moving economic development activity in the city of St. Louis. As you spoke to earlier, Chairwoman Spencer, SLDC is not an agency of the city of St. Louis. It is a private corporation with its separate board of directors. We establish our own budget, and we operate independently as a legally separate corporate entity. We're not affiliated with a political party, and we're considered a quasi-governmental agency. The purpose of this is to ensure that we stay aligned with the vision and goals and stay accountable to the Board of Aldermen, the Mayor's office, and the Comptroller's office as we move economic development activity forward. But we're able to make decisions based on market demands and conditions, and there's not political interference in which decisions around development are being made. However, it's critically important as the aldermen and alderwomen that represent the various wards have significant input and understanding of the development that's happening within their community and what their needs are. We continuously stay engaged to understand those needs while also ensuring that we are moving forward on driving economic development activity to improve the tax base and overall revenue that's generated by the city of St. Louis. To ensure that we're holding ourselves accountable to the Board of Aldermen, SLDC is governed by the volunteer boards, but we are comprised of 2 City of St. Louis aldermen that serve as Board of Directors. You, Chairwoman Spencer, have a seat within the SLDC board as the chairperson of the Budget and Public Employees Committee, and then also the chairperson of the HUDS Committee has a seat on the SLDC Board of Directors. 6 of the 9 development boards that we also oversee have authority or assignment of the chair of each one of those respective boards to have a seat on our committee. LRA, Port Authority, IDA, LDC, LCRA, and PIEA. And ultimately, the mayor of the city of St. Louis appoints the chair of the SLDC Board of Directors, and then that Board of Directors ultimately selects the CEO of the organization. And I'm excited, since I've joined in June 28th of 2021, that we have rebranded and reshifted how SLDC shows up, not only in the business community, but also to the neighborhoods we serve. We've hired 10 neighborhood managers that represent all 79 neighborhoods and within the city of St. Louis, working with community-based organizations, uplifting the needs of those organizations, those groups, those residents, those businesses, to help us make informed decisions about how do we prioritize development or attract development that aligns with the priorities of those organizations and those communities. SLDC will listen, and we create a culture of servant leadership geared towards rapid responsive times, providing accurate information so local parties can pursue ideas, and avoiding unnecessary barriers for projects in disinvested neighborhoods. We also advocate on behalf of large and small projects in these disinvested neighborhoods. With limited expectations for projects that are not feasible or harmful, staff time will be spent vigorously pursuing projects proposed by highly localized developers, residents, and nonprofits. SLDC invests in projects and efforts in disinvested neighborhoods to stimulate the growth in these areas. We want to have the power to make change, but that power belongs to the residents, nonprofits, and developers that have a stake in the future of each neighborhood. As a final piece of my presentation today, I would like to give an update on the Economic Justice Action Plan. As a reminder, the 5 primary goals of that plan is to strengthen neighborhoods, close the wealth gap, improve health and educational outcomes, expand the tax base, and grow the city's population. The Economic Justice Action Plan is organized within those 3 core pillars of economic empowerment, equitable and inclusive development, and neighborhood transformation. As the Board of Aldermen has appropriated over $246 million towards economic justice with support from the Mayor's Office, SLDC has within our stewardship approximately $112 million towards that plan. We have recently completed serving over 900 businesses with the $5,000 grant program. We've also closed on a $10 million development fund to support Tabernacle CDC in North St. Louis City and Habitat for Humanity that serve in South St. Louis City and North St. Louis City on a housing development fund that will ultimately provide affordable home ownership for those that are at 80% AMI or below, as well as creating a new down payment assistance program that will prioritize public employees, providing them with down payment assistance up to $50,000 if they're at 80% AMI or below. Those are just a few ways in which we're stimulating the market, leveraging federal, local, state resources in order to achieve economic empowerment, economic justice for all St. Louisans to thrive. With that, I'm opening it up to any questions that you all may have for me today.
Thank you, Neil. And so if we have before us the overview of SLDC,
That's
which is
correct.
very, very helpful. Then we also have the Economic Justice Action Plan status update, and then we also have a draft of your budget. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, we have the fiscal year 2024 budget. Just for context, this budget has not been approved yet by our board of directors. However, for context for this meeting, I wanted to ensure that I was able to share a proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 and answer any questions that you may have, specifically Chairwoman Spencer, as you will have the opportunity to vote and have a say in actually ratifying this budget for fiscal year 2024 as a board of director for SLDC.
Thank you. If you don't mind, for the committee, just maybe like a broad overview of the budget, maybe so that we can understand kind of where, because you're not a government-funded agency, but you do serve in a, as you pointed out, a quasi-governmental capacity, in that you have authority to make recommendations for what would be tax dollars, you know, our tax abatements and those sorts of things. So you have a huge responsibility, and if you could explain kind of where the funding comes from for your office, and just in a broad sense, and kind of what the overall budget is for SLDC.
Yeah, sure. So as you can see within the draft budget on the first page, outside of the cover page, it shows that SLDC receives approximately $1.5 million per year from Community Development Block Grant. That serves a myriad of opportunities to serve the city of St. Louis, but this is also federal dollars that are coming in. The SLDC partners with our Community Development Administration to actually administer these dollars in conjunction with community. So this Community Development Block Grant Fund supports property maintenance for LRA. It supports business development support. We also use these funds to support our legal teams and council that supports all economic development within the city of St. Louis, but also the facade program that we have rolled out within SLDC is a part of that, and some of our major projects that we have to administer in order to attract businesses to St. Louis in order to continue to grow our tax base. Some of those other revenues from our development boards come from the Port Authority. We have one of the most robust ports when it comes to cargo and grain and freight. And so when we bring in resources, we have leases, mooring leases that the Port Authority is responsible for managing. Over the years, our port has been almost 100% occupied. And currently we're anticipating a revenue for fiscal year 2024 of $1.2 million, which is approximately $200,000 above what was received in fiscal year 2023. Our Land Utilization Authority also has, we put forth $300,000 from that per year to support our overall operations. A reason for that $300,000 is over the previous years, when our LRA properties were not selling at a rate in which we were able to recoup enough funds to support staff and personnel, SLDC actually floated that revenue. So we are currently working at a deficit around $900,000 from the LRA bucket. So over the next few years, we will be recouping those dollars as LRA properties are being sold to cover that shortfall that was realized over the previous few years. We also receive some 0.015% of all of the incentive deals that we conduct, and that's through IDA and LCRA. That's approximately around $300,000 to $400,000 per year. And what you see in this LCRA line item, which is the largest line item within our revenue bucket, is about $1 million is received by the St. Louis Development Corporation from the casino in order to pay the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership to support the city-county partnership efforts as it relates to economic development activity. We also have several parking lots and garages that we're responsible for managing, and that equates to another approximately $1.2 to $1.3 million per year in revenue.
Where is that on the budget?
So that's realized by LCRA. So I'm helping break out that $2.6 million.
Okay, thank you, Neil.
No problem. So that $1 million comes from the casino to support the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. Another about approximately $1.2 to $1.5 million per year is realized through parking fees and revenues that we receive as we operate several parking lots and garages in the city of St. Louis. And then the other funds come from any bond fees that we receive as a result of tax abatement and other things that were realized. But again, that's only 0.015% of every one of those transactions. That equates, again, over the last year is between $200,000 to $400,000. And so what you'll see also is we provide loans through our local development company. We anticipate a revenue of $30,000 from the interest realized from those loans. And then you'll see some other revenues that are shown here. But our overall revenue is about $15.8 million that we anticipate for fiscal year 2024. As we begin to ramp up on our implementation of the American Rescue Plan Act, our personnel budget has increased from $9.8 million to approximately $10.8 million. That's to hire some of our short, limited-term employees in order to implement the unprecedented amount of resources that SODC has at its disposal. SODC leverages the legal support of the City Councilor's office, and that creates a $617,000 expense for SODC that we cover. We also provide support for our certification and workforce monitoring on all of our major projects within the city of St. Louis that receives tax abatements and incentives. So we are responsible for hiring staff that actually goes out to these sites, monitors the compliance. So some of that 0.15% fee that we receive actually goes towards funding our workforce specialists, our compliance specialists that go out on the job sites to monitor those projects to ensure that they're following the ordinances that relates to our women and minority-owned business enterprises, as well as prevailing wage and residency requirements. You'll see that $1 million expense to the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. And also, as we've been ramping up our efforts at SODC, whether it relates to marketing, communications, as well as operational support and the overall implementation of ARPA, last year we spent approximately $1.9 million on contracts with various agencies, but now because we've set the foundation and laid the groundwork for those efforts, we perceive that those funds to be able to taper off. So what you'll see is a decrease of approximately $683,000 spent with partners and consultants to ultimately implement our efforts. So I'm really excited about that, and that will continue to taper off as we begin to stabilize our operations. And so our overall expenses to align with our revenues is $15.8 million as well. So I'll definitely open it up to any questions that you all may have related to the revenues and expenses line items.
Okay, thank you, Director. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, for being here. You already answered one of the questions about the contractors. But the question I've always had, and nobody seems to answer, what role does St. Louis Economic Development Partnership play with us as a city? And I know previously we invested $1 million toward them. So what are we getting for those dollars?
Yeah, so that's a question that we will continue to vet in partnership with the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. There was a contract and agreement that was actually signed 10 years ago that put in place for SODC as a result of the new casino at the time to put forth $1 million per year received from them from tax revenues to support the economic development activity of the region. We see St. Louis, when we talk about St. Louis as a city, people see us as a city, but when we go out nationally and regionally to talk about and sell St. Louis, they don't see St. Louis as city, as county. They see St. Louis as one region. And that creates an opportunity for us to partner on business retention, expansion, and attraction efforts on getting large businesses and employers to the city of St. Louis and to the St. Louis region, as well as they support us on some of our lending with small businesses, But overall, what I am aiming to do in the next 10 years with the Economic Development Partnership is to have more transparency. To exactly what you're speaking to, Alderwoman Boyd, is we want to have monthly reporting on each one of the activities that they're performing and what are the guidelines within that. And so we're actually in the process of negotiating an updated contract for the next 10 years with the Economic Development Partnership, and that will go before our SLDC board in the June meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Director Richardson, for being here. I want to just concentrate quickly on the expense of the ARPA dollars. SLDC's been charged with tens of millions of ARPA dollars to what I think is very good programmatic activity here. And I know it looks like there's been some update on the status of that in your Economic Justice Action Plan, which I think is a proper and prudent use. So, but I just want to, it looks like you've got labeled here most of the ARPA uses, the Digital Equity Fund, also the Contractor Loan Fund. Put some words around that to me, because it's been my understanding that ARPA dollars, there's sort of a prohibition of investing them in the way of loans, but I could be wrong on that. But that it's best used as one-time shots. So explain how that works in concert with the ARPA dollars, if you would.
Yeah, so we have received guidance that they can be placed as a revolving loan
Can.
fund. Yes,
Good.
but it has to be in support of a disproportionate impacted community
Great.
or area. And so what we've done with the contractor loan fund, we've actually split it into two parts. We have one set of resources that's supporting subcontractors and suppliers of large
Good.
businesses and general contractors and development projects to ultimately create a mobilization fund. Because a lot of these small businesses that take on these larger contracts, they have a challenge with covering payroll, purchasing supplies, and so having a mobilization fund allows them to have access to that capital to take on those bigger projects, reduce the risk on them being preventing them from actually bringing on more employees, and actually incentivizes them to take on larger projects. The other portion of that is focused on small business and nonprofit working capital. So a lot of the small businesses and nonprofits, such as CDCs, don't have access to capital to actually operate. They're spending a lot of time fundraising without really spending the time on their mission of whether it's home repair or purchasing vacant land and lot maintenance. Those are the things that we want to see utilized through that working capital fund to support small businesses and nonprofits. So there's a distinction between the contractor, when we talk about the contractor loan fund, it's really talked about mobilization fund, and then we have the nonprofit and small business revolving loan fund, which you see
Yep,
at the
that's
top.
the second one.
Yeah.
So both of those are utilizing ARPA dollars.
That's correct, and they're being leveraged as loan loss reserves for many of the nonprofit funders, fund managers that we're working with. We received approval to partner with St. Louis Community Credit Union to administer the nonprofit and small business revolving loan fund, and then for the contractor and supplier mobilization fund, we're actually working with RISE CDC.
And have any of those loans been placed yet?
No, so we just received approval from the board of directors in our May board meeting to move forward with the fund managers, entering the agreement with the fund managers that will ultimately administer these funds to the entities. And now we're working with those fund managers to develop the program that will ultimately roll out. We anticipate 3 to 6 months to get that established, and then funds to start flowing directly to those stakeholders.
Got it. Okay, and then real quick, if we could shift some attention to the North City commercial corridors. I know that's gotten quite a bit of attention, and the substance of that was sort of a political football where the vagueness of some last-minute amendments came in. I think everyone's on board with the concept of let's develop a commercial corridor that stands the test of time in North City. But are you getting any traction there on more details? I know you've engaged NDC, which is very reputable, help. from a contractor, but any progress there that you see happening in the next several months?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've already started to do, because again, we understand that the frustration and the velocity of these funds need to get to the businesses that need it the most. However, we wanted to be sure that if we allocate and appropriate these funds to the small businesses, that we did it in a way that actually met all of the guidelines of Treasury. Because if we have to claw back any funds, it's going to be a detriment of those businesses that receive them. We also wanted to ensure that we got clarity around what defines a commercial corridor. We have some corridors that half of the corridor sits in a qualified census tract, the other half does not. So we wanted to ensure that we had some clarity within what defines a corridor. And then also what we realized is there are some nonprofits and CDCs and organizations and small businesses that are dependent on public funding in order to operate their business. So they're comfortable with providing the resources, the information that's needed to get access to these funds. But there is a group of stakeholders that have been impacted negatively by COVID that are not used to working on completing grant applications, whether it's a daycare facility or a grocery store. And so what we wanted to do was provide the opportunity to equitably evaluate those responses. And there was a discrepancy between the responses from stakeholders who were typically responding to these type of opportunities versus those who are not. And that's why we engaged NDC to provide that technical assistance. NDC has reached out to all of the 100 plus applicants who have applied and are now currently working with them as the new legislation, the revised legislation, is going through the Board of Aldermen for approval. And once that's completed, we will be working on evaluating those applications, ensuring that it matches the final board bill and ordinance that's passed, and then start to deploy those funds directly to those businesses.
Got it. That's great. That's great. I have no further questions other than maybe we can put in a request, and I know you're probably tracking the ARPA dollars meticulously as it is for the mayor's office and for the budget director, but any reporting along those lines you could share with this committee as you go throughout would be incredibly helpful.
No, that's fine. And we
All to the points that you mentioned, of how serious the
Yeah.
nature is. The last thing we want to do is to have to, go and try to find them dollars that we already gave to what a business is that we're trying to grow.
No, that's great. And we provide a monthly report to, like I said, the mayor's office and the other offices who are tracking this on behalf of the U.S. Treasury, because ultimately the city has to report out to the Treasury on U.S. Treasury on how we're leveraging and utilizing these funds. And we provide a very thorough report to them. And I will be sure to include this committee as the respondent too.
Thank you, Director. No further questions for me, Madam Chairwoman. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you. Alderwoman Schweitzer?
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for the presentation. It's always great to get this much thorough materials before the meetings. Appreciate it. A question about the neighborhood managers. So I see them in the SLDC, action plan update, but where are they in the budget book?
So if you look at, they were actually funded through the economic development sales tax. So if you go to page, let me find it one second. The economic development appropriation on page 2 under revenue type.
Which budget book?
My draft budget, SLDC budget for fiscal year 24.
Right. Oh, somewhere in here. Okay. Whole other thing. Got it. Which page 2?
Yeah, and so if you look under revenue type, there's a line item for economic development appropriation, implementation of the framework recommendations. So we conducted an equitable economic development framework, and one of the recommendations was for the neighborhood managers, to hire 10 neighborhood managers to support the 79 neighborhoods. So that's where that funding is sourced from. And the economic development sales tax has its own board. We partner with CDA and the Planning and Urban Design Agency to support them as they present their budgets to the Economic Development Sales Tax Committee. And so that funding is coming approved through that board, and then ultimately comes to SLDC as a result of that to help cover the cost for the neighborhood managers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've started to see neighborhood managers at the neighborhood meetings that I go to, and I'm trying to make sure I understand and their community understands what they can be utilized for, and, because this is a relatively new thing.
Yeah, so they are the representatives for the residents, the businesses, and the neighborhoods. So many times when a resident has a question about starting a business or they have a question about purchasing LRA property, they try to reach out to LRA or SLDC, or they don't even know where to start.
Or
And so,
us, yeah.
or the older person, right? And so what we've done is begin to train these neighborhood managers on understanding all of SLDC operations and how they can promote the various programs, products, initiatives that we have available, and they should be the first point of contact as it relates to those activities, and then they can connect them with the proper source at St. Louis Development Corporation. And what we've also started to do as we've improved our operational efficiencies is to ensure that we have a customer relationship management program called Salesforce. And so we log in all of those entries, understanding what are the needs of those residents. And as we're making decisions on how we allocate resources, we better understand the needs of those communities based on those responses and make decisions on our budget of how we appropriate dollars to meet the needs of our residents, businesses, and neighborhoods.
Okay, and switching gears slightly, with LRA changes that have happened over the last several months, can you give us a little bit just more color on that, since we have just in the book, but
Yeah.
just a little bit more background?
No, it was important for us to just give more transparency and accountability to all of the individuals, the businesses, the entities that were looking to purchase LRA property. There was some confusion around does a letter of support need to be mandated from a board of aldermen or from a neighborhood organization, and we've made it more clear around what is the process for how you purchase LRA, whether it's an option, whether it's a sale, for the property, and then ultimately being able to provide more clarity as to the expectation of how to activate that property. Because our goal is not to just get properties and assets out of our bank to an entity. Our overall goal is to get dollars, get resources, and get those buildings back on the tax roll to activate that land. And so we want to ensure that we have accountability not only to ourselves, but also to the stakeholders that purchase the LRA property, that they have a plan for development and can lay out exactly what that plan is and share it with the community for feedback prior to us being able to approve any assets that's being sold for redevelopment.
I think one of the LRA sticking points that's come up a lot from my constituents is the garden lease program changing. And I appreciate anything, it's not perhaps a budget conversation, but I do appreciate any communication that your office can share in a proactive way with folks who are affected by that, because I think there's still a lot of outstanding questions.
Yeah, so our goal here is one of the primary goals of the Economic Justice Action Plan is to close the wealth gap. And what we see is closing a wealth gap can't be done by just leasing property and assets. We want to see ownership happen. And so our goal with the Garden Lease program is to find a way to have ownership in those sites. And if we have a current option on a LRA property or Garden Lease, that we can begin to move you to ownership and find ways for that site to generate revenue for that stakeholder, that neighborhood organization, or for that community itself. And so that's our goal, and we want to continue to engage in those conversations, understanding whether the pros and the cons of a Garden Lease, and we have a plan to actually roll out greater discussion about the Garden Lease program and get more feedback. Again, this is a work in progress. The LRA is the oldest and largest land bank in the city, in the country, and we don't want to take that as a shield of pride. Our shield of pride should be activating those sites that work for our community.
Right, I agree with that. I think with the sales component of a garden lease program, a lot of times people are using the land to beautify it or to feed their community, and it's less about what revenue they can generate on the site for so many, and more about what they can grow or what the site can be in a different way.
Yeah.
So I just don't want that, the cost to be prohibitive to folks who are trying to, improve their lives in a way that's not financial.
No, understood. And we want to continue to work with them to understand how we can be partners at the city and the LRA to help them achieve those goals that they have for their neighborhood.
Well, thank you. I look forward to getting more guidance on that.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Saunier.
Hi, Neil.
How you doing?
Good. Well, thanks for coming. This is super detailed. I know that you're going to be coming to HUD's too, so I'll save some of my questions for there. I've seen the neighborhood managers. I've seen her, the one that I have. She's like, I was same thing. I'm like, are you on the campaign trail or am I? She was at like a lot of like neighborhood meetings and was able to, I even talked to her when I was campaigning to get sort of a more of an idea of her field, her role. So I just think it might be helpful for people at home. If I'm a resident, what can my neighborhood manager, what can they help me with? What can they assist with? What is their role like with the alderperson?
Yeah, so the neighborhood manager, again, is the face of SLDC in the neighborhood, working to help residents and businesses and the neighborhood organizations to understand these are the resources that are made available by the city, and to also to listen, learn, and be able to respond to some of the issues that are coming up, and helping us prioritize from a leadership level or even from a resource perspective, how do we allocate resources in various neighborhoods and communities to meet those needs. So they are the face of the neighborhood. I would recommend, again, that you engage with your neighborhood manager, whether you're a resident or a business or a neighborhood organization, to just get to know them and understand what programs we have available, what's accessible to them. But then also the neighborhood managers, we've directed them, they should be in communication with the alderperson around, these are the things that SODC is offering from a resource perspective, but then also hearing your priorities, because we don't want to wait until a deal comes across our desks for us to get aligned on what the needs and priorities are of the community. We want to be more proactive and ensure that that's embedded within our incentive process overall. So again, the neighborhood manager is the face of our organization and on the ground.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Aldrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, of course. Alderwoman Boyd.
I just wanted to make two statements. One, I think I've been doing this too long. So what's going on? I'm like, okay, I've been there, done that. I know how it should go. I know what's going on. But two, I think the only neighborhood manager I've had communication with in the 13th Ward is Chevette, and she is phenomenal. Because she's letting me know about meetings I didn't even know existed. So she is great. But I think to the point of what you're saying, Mr. Richardson, is I think it's an education piece for the residents, because a lot of people are thinking they're taking the neighborhood improvement specialist job, and they're not. And so one of your managers had contacted me, what's his name?
We have 10 of them. So
I can't think of his name. But he had asked, why did I want, because like we meet with the neighborhood improvement specialist, he said, well, why do you want to have the manager there? And I said, because it has to be a partnership. And so that's what people have to understand. We have to stop this silo in our city. And so what I looked at was the neighborhood improvement specialists, the building inspectors, the neighborhood managers work as a team.
Yeah.
And so that way it can embrace the community as a whole. So I think Chevette is a good example of one of those people, because she does try to make it happen. And the good thing was, with the $5,000 grant, she literally went business to business. So I applaud her for that, because you have a lot of people that don't go to that extreme. So thank you for that, but I've just been doing this too long, because I'm like, I already know how it should go, but thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, for being here today. Just a couple of things on the budget side. Just for educational purposes, we do fund, the city does, through the economic development appropriation, that 920, that is from the economic development sales tax?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then the Prop NS bonds, those are bonds that those are real estate taxes that voters voted to put towards building stabilization. And then there's a handful of other, of income from the city to SLDC from some city income. So we do fund SLDC to some extent, of course, not to the lion's share of it.
Right.
And then the new market fees, those are fees on new market tax credits, is that correct?
Yeah, so one thing I failed to mention, which was an oversight on my part, is the St. Louis Development Corporation has its own new market tax credit community development entity. That community development entity is been awarded the most successful allocatee in the country for a municipality. And so a good portion of our revenues, $2.9 million, actually come from those new market tax credit fees. And those are a result of us managing many of those projects, many large-scale projects that leverage a new market tax credit program. This is a federally funded program through the U.S. Department of Treasury, through their CDFI, and we work directly with the U.S. Department of Treasury and the CDFI on that new market tax credit program. So it has no impact on the tax base of the city, but it actually promotes increasing our tax base, because instead of us having to leverage incentives such as tax abatement and other local incentives, we're able to leverage a new market tax credit program to actually incentivize large-scale economic development that with the focus on workforce creation in our low to moderate income communities.
Thank you for that explanation. And I think between, in cities where the Economic Development Agency is up within the city government, which is the case in several cities, obviously, but those new market tax credits would be administered by the city, a city agency of some kind, and those fees would therefore roll into it, so would some of the development fees. So even though you're a separate entity, in many cases, the development corporation is part of the city itself. So we really appreciate you recognizing that. And even though we don't have budgetary approval here for your budget, it is an integral part and a very necessary, economic development is a necessary part of any city. And the work that you do would otherwise be done by a city department and be authorized by this committee and the Board of Aldermen in a general sense. Really quickly on the port, because you mentioned that we have a very busy port and a very full port. The city owns a large amount of land along the riverfront, and by large amount, I mean almost the majority of that land. And there's a lot of obviously port activity that goes along with that. For those of you who don't know, the city of St. Louis is the second largest port in the United States, the region. We have access to all 6 major rail carriers, which is unique to St. Louis, New Orleans, and Chicago. We are really at a the most northern part of the Mississippi River, where you can take barge traffic without hitting a single lock or hitting any ice on the nation's largest river, the Mississippi. So the port work is so very vitally important and represents such an incredible set of assets and also opportunities and actual economic activity for our region. If you could, since the city does own the majority of that land, for informational purposes for myself and the committee, could you explain, since we own the land, who the leasing agency and where the lease funds actually go, and how some of them get to SLDC and how some of them go to the Port Authority?
So the leases is between the Port Authority and those various entities that are leasing mooring leases for the Port Authority. Those funds are then appropriated through that lease to the Port Authority, and then a portion of that those funds actually support the overall operations of the St. Louis Development Corporation to ensure that we have the right staffing and operational support to support the Port Authority itself, and then the overall other back office support for SLDC as an entity.
Do you know what percentage of those funds go to SLDC versus the rest of the funds? Do they stay within the Port Authority?
So I would say the majority of them actually go towards, again, the operations of SLDC. I would have to provide that information in greater detail with you post this meeting. But I would say the majority of them actually go towards SLDC operations to support the overall Port Authority itself. So we have staff members that are responsible for negotiating those leases, managing the activity within the port, covering any pay for parking, working on ensuring that the wharf is clean and clear of any debris. That's a very significant matter. So those operational support, it goes to SLDC, but ultimately supports the operations of the Port Authority itself. But I can give you that breakdown at a later date. I don't have that detail in front of me right now.
Yeah, that would be great, Mr. Richardson. I think just kind of recognizing that huge opportunity there and also all that activity would be super helpful to understand the city's ownership of the land, who has the leasing authority, where the funds go from those, from the proceeds from those leases, and then what they actually do.
Sure, and one of the things that we've done over the last several years since again, I've taken this position is evaluate the lease rates. And so as new leases are coming up for renewal, renegotiating those lease terms because of all of the benefits that you've mentioned, this is a very valuable port. And if we're going to continue to grow as a city, to ensure that we are managing that revenue appropriately and that we are costing and managing our lease rates appropriately as well. So that's a great point, and we'll continue to evaluate that as new leases come up, and that's why you see an increase in our revenue over the last year of over $200,000, and that's as a result of us reevaluating those existing leases and ensuring that we're getting appropriate revenue for those various opportunities. So.
Yeah, I would appreciate that follow-up. Any additional questions from members of the committee?
No, thank you.
Yeah, just want to thank you again
you.
for joining us
Appreciate
today, Mr. Richardson, and for bringing your team. If you wanted to real quickly introduce who came, just for those of us who may or may not know all your folks.
Sure. So we have Stacy Fowler. She leads our economic empowerment work for us, our women, small minority-owned businesses. Our Northside Economic Empowerment Center is under her purview, as well as the certification program and the compliance. So Stacy Fowler is a strong leader for us. We have our Vice President of Signature Initiatives and Partnerships, Mr. Steve Davis, Charlie Hahn, our CFO, Mr. Rob Orr. He leads our equitable and inclusive development work, including our land assemblage, site assemblage, and also our Port Authority. And in our incentives, we have Zachary Wilson, who works very closely with Rob Orr, who leads all of our incentives programs, and then Mr. Lance Knuckles, who, as he say, has the privilege of holding two jobs, which is managing the neighborhood managers, as well as our land realization authority as our director of real estate. So that's the team that joined me today to cheer me on. So I appreciate their support.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, I don't know if, Sheriff, have you signed in? Yes, ma'am. All right, thank you so much. We have, the last order of business is the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Betts, if you don't mind, introducing yourself, your budget, who you are, and make sure to remember to speak into the microphone.
Thank you. I am Vernon Betts, Sheriff of the City of St. Louis for the past 7 years. Our budget is budget 1551, budget 115. 315 is our budget number.
315 is what?
Budget number.
The,
I'm not sure.
oh, okay.
176, though.
I'm not sure if that's what you asked for.
Okay. Tell us where you'd like us to look, Sheriff.
Do you have a copy of the City of St. Louis General Fund, this budget here? Do you have that? General Fund C315000, Sheriff. You guys have that? Good to, and I'm sorry I didn't say hello to everybody.
Hello.
Good to see all of you.
Yeah. I don't have your revenue book. So in the line item detail, we're on page 176.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Sheriff. Go ahead.
And so, Alderwoman Carr, thank you again for allowing me to meet with you guys. This has been something rare for me. I think I've only met 2 or 3 times since I've been in the office with any budget committees. And I probably should have been a whole lot more than that. But just to lay out some things, I don't know if you guys know, usually when I do my budget, it goes through the judges at the 22nd Circuit, and they scrutinize my budget, and then they send it over to City Hall to be scrutinized by whoever scrutinizes it, HE and A and whoever that is. But then I also send a copy over. In the course of preparing my budget, I work a little bit with Paul Payne, not a little bit, but a whole lot. But in my 7 years of being in office, this was probably the first year that I got just about everything that I wanted in my budget. There are some numbers I'm going to show you where we're off a little bit, but overall, money-wise, not too far from what we asked for.
Well, according to our budget books, you are $94,000 over.
Is that right?
What you asked for.
Well, according to this, what I have in my hand, we asked for $11,583. $11,583, and we got. I'm sorry. Let me back up. That's what they gave us, right? I'm at the bottom of page 177, you are.
Okay.
And what they gave us in that 1, 2, 3, 4th column, what they gave us was a total of $11,583.
Okay, Sheriff, you're talking about millions, correct?
Yeah, I'm talking about millions. 11,583,000.
Okay. That is the requested amount?
That is
11 million?
That is what we received. That's what we think we.
And then the
Huh?
requested was 11,583,000.
Right.
Proposed budget was more than that, 11,731, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I was looking at the personnel figures, but your overall budget is $200,000 or $150,000 more than requested. Okay. So if you want to walk us through those numbers that you said were a little bit off that we may need to, is there anything that you, from your perspective, Sheriff, we need to address? So if I'm looking at your personnel schedule, some things that there are a few things that jump, well.
Okay, on page 176, is that where you are?
I was looking at the personnel schedule on 178, but you tell us where what I have here, or what it looks like is you have 170 employees,
Yes?
correct? Okay.
No, that's what I'm allotted.
163 filled from last year, looks like, right? Something like that. From 163? Is that just attrition, or what's going on?
People leaving.
Yeah, okay. Well, Sheriff, you tell us what we need to fix, and we'll work on fixing it for you.
Well, first and foremost, I think you all are all aware that I have a pay bill that I'm working on. And if we can get that pay bill passed so I can get these guys paid. We are the lowest law enforcement agency in the St. Louis region.
I am aware of a pay bill. One thing I will say for this committee and for the city in a general sense, and we've talked about this, it's very frustrating for us to be approving a budget based on a pay schedule and then immediately reconsider the pay schedule after approving this budget. It makes no fiscal sense, and it doesn't really align with fiscal responsibility or a balanced budget. So we need to address that as a legislative body. I think we should consider, especially considering this committee oversees the budget and personal employees, making sure that we take into consideration the pay of our personal employees first, and then consider the city's budget. So we'll have to work on shifting that this year, and so I'm going to put that out there for this committee to consider how we might be doing that. But as it relates to where we are right now, this budget that you have considers the current pay schedule without regard to the pay bill that's coming our way after we approve the city's budget.
Okay.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, did you have a question?
It does include a 3% raise in this budget, though?
It does,
Okay.
right, Dan? Yes.
Yeah, I think all the departments have presented their
That's-
salary, with a 3% increase. Was there an additional increase in the pay bill to the 3%?
Yes.
Okay, but which is not considered in this budget. Thank you. That's helpful.
But we're not going to consider that in this budget, right? Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Go ahead. Did you have a clarifying question, Alderwoman Saunier?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Sonia.
Hi. So the 3% is in here.
Right.
But then someone in Alder is carrying a pay bill, so is it going to be 6% total per pay bill?
It's going to end up being more than 6%, I do believe. The pay bill is going to be as much as a 10%. Tell me if I'm wrong. The pay bill actually could be more than.
So she just said that
So, Carl-
sorry, trying to talk into the mic. She said, people at home can't hear you, so I'm just repeating, that the starting salary is $34,606, and they want to raise it up to $45,000. And so you are saying that there's this 3% that's in the budget that if it's approved will happen, and then the pay bill that Shamim is carrying will be additional funds on top of that.
Yes. Yes.
And you,
This is the first, Sheriff, that we're hearing of those details, so, those specifics. So forgive us.
No,
I mean, we have a balanced budget right now as it is, and we're trying to find little pockets for additional things. So it's going to be very difficult. I don't know how we're going to
yeah, I just don't,
consider.
I'm struggling just to see the alignment, because I understand that the goal for us as a city is to increase all pay as 3%. But for me, sitting on this committee, if we're giving 3% of your budget, and then you're gonna come back with another bill that gives additional money that we're not thinking of, especially because, I mean, obviously there are many departments with many needs and many workers that are unpaid. So to me, it's like, okay, you're giving 3% now, but then if it's maybe gonna be another 10% for Shameen's, that could go up to 13%. And I don't know how
okay.
that.
I get you. Let me give you a little more background, and I think it might help all of us, but that's why I wanted to bring the pay bill up now, because I didn't want, when it comes up later on, and you guys say, well, we just had Vernon, budget meeting, and he's getting 3%, and now he's turning around asking for a whole lot of other money. So I want you all to know what's going on. Let's be transparent. My guys are the lowest paid law enforcement agency in the St. Louis region. We have been for years. We are suffering. We are suffering. I'm losing an average of 23 deputies a year. So these numbers I just gathered this morning, starting salary for St. Charles, starting salary.
If you don't mind, Sheriff, because we're not considering that aspect before us, I think the Alderwoman from the 7th has a point that we're all thinking about right now, which is that we have a budget before us which considers the revenue for the city as we know it. Yeah. It's a balanced budget. It has a lot of additional needs that were not being met, and the frustration, I think, is just that we're unaware of the additional ask for your department. It's not part of this budget, and we're failing to see how we're going to make additional revenue for the city when your very needed consideration comes before us. And the timing of considering a pay raise immediately following the passage of a budget is in opposite order of, I think, the way that we should be considering matters like this.
Right, because we can't consider the budget in its totality if there's still pieces coming after the fact.
Correct.
Okay, I understand that.
That's our frustration. So
Okay.
perhaps what we can do today is discuss your budget.
Okay.
And then what fixes we are considering for today. And then have that further pay raise discussion. And if you have a figure for what you're going to be asking for in a, then it would be helpful for us to know that as we consider the budget, as Alderwoman Saunier pointed out, as a whole picture here.
Okay, look, we'll discuss just the budget. And so let's go back to what I have in front of me, my budget that we turned into City Hall. Board of E&A has already signed off on this, what I have in my hand,
Okay.
right?
So is that the budget we have before us?
Hope so,
I believe 176 and 177.
right.
Right. Oh, and there are there are little fixes we need to make in this budget. Okay, let's go through them.
There are some things, yeah, so as we go down the page on 176, the first item that we get to is office supplies.
Okay.
When we ask for 85,000, all we're gonna get is 55.
Part of our concern with that,
Can you speak into the mic and
Can you
state
introduce
your
yourself?
name?
Thank you.
part of our concern,
Name and rank.
Tammy Hogan, captain with the St. Louis City Sheriff's Office. We pay for the jury summons postage out of that account, and we're averaging about 5,000 every 2 months just for the postage for the jury summons. So on top of our regular office supplies, we also have to pay for the jury summonses.
And that's what did you say that was?
It's about 5,000 every 2 months.
Okay. Okay.
And Cora, this is an expense that we incur, and I really don't have a whole lot, well, I do have something to do with the jurors, but for the most part, this is something that probably the courts should be paying for because it's paying for juror summons that we mail out thousands, and it's about cost of about,
So are you all, so has this always been like this?
yes.
Okay, and so, Sheriff, I think I had a conversation with you a couple of years ago about these extra things you have been picking up. And I asked you, could you invoice those people that you're picking up extra things for that normally you all were absorbing the cost, and right now you can't absorb the cost? And so that's what I was trying to figure out. Why wouldn't you start invoicing these departments? If it's the courts, then invoice the courts. If it's Greg Daly, then invoice Greg Daly. Invoice those departments to say, okay, and because the city is changing rapidly.
Very much.
And so that's what I'm saying. You all have picked up, and I respect that you all have picked up more duties than any other department in law enforcement that has been doing. You picked up more things that's out of your realm. And so I guess my question is, budget-wise, why would you absorb a lot of those costs? Why wouldn't you invoice those departments?
Yeah. Alderwoman Boyd, we've been doing this for years, and it's in a statute that we have to do this.
Okay, and so
And-
is it something we need to do to change this?
I need
Or
to-
does it,
I
you
need
need
to
to
go
go to Jefferson City or?
City and get the statute changed.
So that's what I would suggest, because apparently you all are accumulating costs that technically your office can't leverage. Am I off or on, or?
No,
Okay.
you're right
I'm
on.
just making sure, because like I said, the city as a whole is changing how they're doing business. And so a lot of things that we see that have been done in the past is not okay now. We got to look at things differently.
Right.
So you might need to make trips up to Jefferson City to say, okay, we need to look at this differently.
And you're right, and we've done some of that, made trips up to Jeff City. The other part to that puzzle is, and we still can't figure it out, when I do my budget goes up to the judges. Then the judges do their scrutinizing and all that kind of stuff, and I've always had that log jam that what we want, if they decide they don't want it, they cut it, send it over to Paul Payne and whoever else, and that's usually the way it ends up, the way the judges and Paul Payne and the E&A wanted to do it. I've been fighting those folk for the 7 years I've been in office. I don't even know why the judges have to look at my budget, but they do. I don't, we should be taking our budget directly to Paul Payne, and then the city, or you guys make a determination about my budget, but I don't know why the judges always got to stick their hands in my budget, which they've been doing since I got in office. And so there's some of the problems, some of those fees that you and I talked about 2 or 3 years ago. I've begged the judges, in order for me to increase the fees, we have to go through the presiding judge, right? Yeah. We can't get the presiding judge, this one we got now, or the one we had before, or the one we had. I've gone through 4 presiding judges now, and I've not had one of them cooperate with me and say, hey, we're gonna okay you increasing your funds so that you can take care of some of these expenses.
Sheriff, can you tell us which fees you're looking to increase? Or what is the revenue line here that we're considering? Could you speak to that?
Hi, I'm Captain Tim Hale with the St. Louis Sheriff's Office. It's not necessarily on a line budget here for this part of the budget. It would be a revenue increase for the city of St. Louis in order to be added to our budget, and some of our requests would be could be recovered on like our office supplies and our health and safety supplies and stuff like that. So that would be on page 176, and it would probably even cover our computer services and office services as well, and the other fees that we are now able to collect.
So if we were to take these things one bite at a time, we have requested budget items that are not fulfilled. We have additional revenue that could be considered from additional fees, and then the fact that the judges have some oversight in your budget. So let's take those things in 3 separate tranches. If we could go through all the requested budget items that are not met and the rationale behind them, let's start there, and then we'll go through the other pieces, the oversight of the judges, and what we could possibly consider as far as additional revenue from the income from those fees.
Sure.
Did you have a clarifying question, Alderman Aldridge?
Yeah, just for clarification, is the judges touching your budget, is that a state statute thing?
We'll get into that. Let's get into that second. So let's go through all the pieces of the budget, and then we'll handle that question. I feel like we were kind of bouncing.
It was state statute, I was like, there's no.
Is it a state statute?
He said no.
Well, yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
So let's go through your unmet needs. We have the office supplies, you mentioned the computers, which includes stamps.
Correct.
Okay, then we have the computer services, which I'm assuming is 560,000, the 11,000 requested and the 2,000 proposed budget. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. What is?
For an actual, the new timekeeping system that the city has gone through, that's our lease fee on our time clocks. We have 6 time clocks.
Can you talk into the mic? You have to talk into the mic.
You have actual time clocks?
We have
Like
time-
do you punch with cards?
Facial.
Oh, okay.
So we have 6 of those, and it was cheaper for us to lease them so that we constantly get upgrades versus outright purchasing them. So that's what that cost would be for.
That would be 11,000, or is that the 2,000?
It's 11,000 a year.
And then what are you getting out of 2,000?
Not enough?
Not enough, not enough.
So what is the 2,000?
So the 2,000, last year you had for that service line item 2,500. What did that cover?
That covered the old time system of NovaTime system that we had in place prior to, which was a time clock system as well.
Okay, and then we have a new system in place?
Correct.
And then, and the annual fee is $11,000.
Correct, for 6 time clocks.
Okay, so you like literally don't have the funds to pay the bill on that? Okay,
Correct.
okay. And then what else do we have here? Office supplies?
The office services, so we
Oh, uh-huh.
have body cameras for our outside service people and our mental health deputies, so that they all have body cameras. We can get everything recorded, downloaded. So we go through FirstNet, they're on a smartphone, and for all of our phones right now, I think our fee is right at $1,000 a month, not including what we have to use for the server that we have to download this, our yearly fee for that.
Yeah, and just like we were saying, Alderman Boyd, all of this new technology and stuff we have to have in order to comply with some of our safety issues. Everybody wants everybody in law enforcement to have body cameras, and we need them.
We don't disagree with what you all are saying. I think what Alderman Aldridge had asked, it was about the state statute. So if we can adjust it, that's one thing, but if it's per the state statute, that's another lane you all have to go in to say, okay, we have to change this. And we know the statutes are so old and the way things were done, it's not like that anymore. And so whoever your person is that's in Jefferson City, they have to start the dialogue to say, okay, this has to be changed. But I just think that your department has taken on more and you're not being compensated for the extra that you're doing. And so I don't think that's justified either. But it's just, I think you kind of threw the committee off when you presented us something and then you came back and said, well, something else coming. So we like, oh, wait a minute. So I think the chair is trying to look at how we can look at these numbers and what we could do on our end.
Okay, I got you. I understand that. We'll stick strictly with the budget.
Right.
And not that other stuff that I brought up.
So the computer services, that time clock subscription, the body camera, the stamps, is there anything else specifically that we need to be looking at to shift around?
The education and training on
Are you speaking to the mic?
Sorry, the education and training on the next page. So just for our training services of sending 25 deputies through post-training every year is $150,000. But we have to make a trip to Jeff City for our day and night driving. We have to pay for all the ammunition. And just the ammunition itself is about $9,000 just to get a class through. That's how expensive it is for shotgun and handgun training.
Now, I have to ask this, because your proposed budget is $150,000 more than what you asked for, is there room to shift around from any of the other oversupplied, for example, capital leases? I see you have a capital lease allotment of $164,000 versus your request of $3,400.
So the capital lease is we are leasing brand-new radios because our radios are obsolete. And that's our lease payment for 4 years.
That's a 4-year payment?
Correct.
Why do we have a 4-year payment in here for a 1-year budget item? Do we know?
That's just a 1-year lease.
Is that the cost of 1 year out of 4, or is that okay?
One year out of 4.
So the
Every year.
$164,000, that's every year.
It'll be 161, I believe, is the actual cost every year for the 4 years.
Okay.
And so after the leasing time, do they renew you with newer radios or?
We would have to renew a package, otherwise our current radios right now, I think, are 17 years old.
Yes.
So,
No, I remember that piece, but what I think the chair was asking, this $161,000 that you paying for the leased radios, after your 4 year, it's just like a car. After your time is up on your lease, you get another car.
Nope, these are
So do you
ours.
get another, okay, so then you'll own them.
That we own
So
them.
do they give you updated ones after the 4 years?
no, but they will continue to service them as needed.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm adding this up, the time clocks, the body cameras, and the educational and services, that's a total of $49,000, and then you've got some additional situation with the stamps. Okay, so now that we have kind of a general idea of what is missing from the budget, if we could address the question from from Alderman Aldrich on the piece with regards to the judge's involvement
State statute.
in the state statute and what dictates the judge's input on your budget. What you put together your budget and the judges just come in and do what to it?
I actually present my budget to the judges, as it has been done, I guess, from the creation of time, but that's the way it was when I took office. Present my budget. Actually, I have several budget meetings with the judges. And they'll go through their budget and what they're gonna take from mine to add to their budget, or what they're gonna subtract from their budget or whatever. But they always seem to, since I've been in office, they always seem to take a whole lot from me and do whatever they do with, I guess, to pad their own budget.
Is this required activity? What requires this meeting of the budgets?
It's, when you say required,
Do the judges come and like make you do it?
nobody makes me do anything.
Well,
But I understand what you're saying. No, Carl, listen. It's kind of understood. They expect me to come. But you know. I
you don't have to.
If I don't want to.
But, so you want to?
So we just don't understand, what do they have, this is apples and oranges to me. The judge has one budget, you have another budget. So what does one have to do with the other?
You tell me.
It's the way it's been since we've.
And so, see, that goes back to the state statute. The state statute was made when, 1800?
I don't.
No, ma'am. I believe under Chapter 57 Sheriffs in the RSMO, there's a subsection there, and I'm going to say 100, 215, somewhere in that section there, that tells you that the judges have the ability to approve how many deputies we are allowed to have.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
That's all it says. I think that somebody has gotten off the rails and decided that they're going to tell us what we can have and what we can get,
Okay.
or anything else past that point
Okay.
out of the RSMO. So
So
they
what's
approve
that?
how many we
what
get,
is
how many
that?
people we have.
56.
I can look it up and give you that for sure.
But the sheriff has indicated that it is not the state statute that directs the judges or requires the judges to have any input on your budget, but just that it's been commonplace.
Yes.
But that no one tells the sheriff what to do, so if you don't want to do this, sounds like you don't have to.
I guess I wouldn't have to, but I think it's going to create some kind of disturbance if I
Okay.
don't.
But it's not a disturbance that this committee can help you with.
I understand.
Okay. All right, now the last question would be, what was that last question? We had,
Statute.
do we,
That's what Russia.
that was the second one. We have all of the items here that are missing. Oh, the pay, excuse me, yes,
Since we're on
that's right.
state statute, could I,
Say that again?
since we are on state statute, can I jump in?
Sure.
Real quick, for clarity, can you guys also state your name again?
Captain Hogan?
Captain Tim Hale, Captain Tammy Hogan.
Gotcha. So going back to this judge thing, you were saying that this mic is ghetto.
Super sensitive.
Yeah, going back to the budget, you're saying it is in statute that says they may look at how many deputies to hire, correct?
Correct.
So it doesn't say shall.
Does not.
Okay, so going back to, I think, with Aldo, and how long have you been with the department?
I've been there 25 years,
And it's always been like that?
since the day I started.
So I will go back to what Alderwoman Boyd said. Maybe I probably need a better lobbyist. If this is an issue, and I know the sheriff is up in,
Alderman, we don't have a budget for a lobbyist or where to even go to get one.
well, I know the sheriff's up there quite often lobbying, so I would say that is probably where you want to start, especially if they don't say shall and it's not force.
Right.
Going back to the chairwoman, then it just sounds like the sheriff want to, kind of do it.
And Alderman, yeah, you know, you've seen me up there several times. And when we've gone up to actually try to get the judges, we've actually had this bill on the table to get the judges out of my hair. They've always been able to pull some kind of sidebar with somebody and get the bill off the table. we've tried twice now since I've been in office to try to get the judges out of my hair. Leave
You don't
me
got much hair up there.
alone. No, right.
So outside of them, they also move money around outside of the deputies, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Yes.
Even though the state statute don't allow them to do that?
yes.
Sound like y'all gotta figure that out in-house.
So they have like the final approval on all
mouth
of
to
our hires. So we will interview them, we get them over to take the physical fitness test, we interview them, we yay or nay them, we fill out this form. Then we have to send them to the judges for the judges to approve for us to hire.
Is that state statute?
Yes. Or second and third class counties, however they enroll that to a first class county. How they do that, I don't know.
So repeat yourself, what did you say now?
It's for second, and the law applies to second and third class counties and fourth class counties where the judges have that option to decide how many people the sheriff has, how many is approved for the sheriff to have, and whether they're hired or not. And they can even include any kind of testing they wish to do, which is why we physically have to take our new deputy hires down to the police academy and have them do the same police test that the police department employees have to do as police officers prior to hire. We have to do that exact same test. So that also in turn causes a problem for me. Once they figure out that they can pass that test, they now go from us to the police department within a matter of a year or two after being on the department and having a little experience behind them or some training, and they just go over and get more money over to the police department.
Okay, can we talk about the revenue side for just a moment? You mentioned that there's a fee that you charge and that you'd like to increase. If I'm looking at the revenue estimates, page 9, Sheriff's Office, I've got revenues here from a notice fee, court fees, sheriff's fees, garnishment fees, transportation of prisoners, miscellaneous. What are the fees that you're looking to?
So out of that, out of all those, Alderman Spencer, it would be garnishment fees, sheriff's fees is your number one. And just right off the top of my head, I think we were in the neighborhood of like $175,000 revenue income that would be generated just by bringing us up to surrounding county standards on the sheriff's fees that are charged by St. Louis County, St. Charles County, and Jefferson County is what we looked at as well. They currently charge like $50 to $70-something per service for each individual service. We're at $36.
Okay, and those, what is a sheriff's fee for?
So that would be, if you come in to have somebody served as an individual, you want somebody served, we charge $36 currently.
You charge $36 to have somebody served?
Yes, ma'am. That includes us driving their personal vehicle to somebody's house to serve that person in order for them to be notified that they're going to court.
No kidding. That's pretty low.
Our surrounding county is $70 plus.
Okay. That is pretty low. Okay, so but the judges set that service fee?
Yes, ma'am. Every April, they begin the process of looking into the fees and what the court's going to charge.
Okay.
And then in September, I believe, or October, they set the fees for the following year.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
so
so as
if
of
you,
January
you
1,
want to
that
go
fee
from
becomes
36 to, you would like that fee to go from 36 to what?
We have a breakdown of all those scales that we've supplied the judges, and it's individually. So, I mean, basic is $70 is what we're asking for.
Okay, if you could share that with the committee and who the presiding judge is that's overseeing this budget
Sure. I just
question.
sent it back to her in January as well as to Judge Hogan, the presiding judge.
Yeah, just send that request or send any supporting documents what the surrounding counties are charged and the last time the city considered an increase in those fees.
Yeah, I don't know when they.
Well, if that would be
I'll
helpful.
try and find out when
That
they
would-
increase those fees.
Okay, that would be helpful. So that could potentially raise the sheriff's fees line item in the revenue from 475 to, as you pointed out, another 150 or something like that. But that's, so that would address these additional expenses. And then lastly, if we could just briefly discuss what it is your pay increase that you're proposing would be. If you've got a 10% pay increase, if I'm looking at personnel expenses of 10.2 essentially $11 million, a 10% increase would, across the board, be around $1.1 million. Is that what you're understanding for the pay increase, Bill, that you're proposing?
It would probably be substantially more. Currently, I can just say this. I'm competing with people like Barnes Hospital. Their starting salary is over $39,000 a year. Most of the people that I know that are pretty qualified to be able to come to work for me are making over $42,000 a year. I've asked for $45,000. I think the sheriff had actually put in the budget maybe for $43,000 as a starting salary for sheriff's deputies on that. I also have to look at the cost of insurance. If I had a man that comes here with a family, the cost of biweekly insurance is $800 and something a month, or $800 and something a paycheck. Our current starting salary is $13.31 every 2 weeks. Right there, I'm automatically behind the 8 ball as far as being about a $400 difference before taxes. So then I have to look at whether that man can either make his house payment, make a car payment, put enough gas in his car to come to work, with maybe possibly getting $100 and $150 every 2 weeks out of a paycheck based on a family.
Yeah, Alderwoman Carr, you know, I appreciate you all letting me come before you, but the sheriff department has been treated like Cinderella for years. You stay at home and work while everybody else attends the ball. St. Charles, starting salary for St. Charles deputy, $57,446.73. Starting salary for just these counties around St. Louis, Jefferson County.
Sheriff, let me interrupt just real quickly, because we're coming at the end of our time, and you know that I advocated very strongly for you to get your last set of raises.
Yes.
And, you know, I do believe it's important that we pay our sheriffs well. That being said, if we could just we're not considering that bill before us, so I don't want to confuse the committee. If we just had so we're looking at more than $1 million in additional fees. I think or additional costs to the city for that proposal. So I think what we'll do is maybe have a conversation at the very least with the sponsor of that bill and try to understand what will come before us and the timeline for that.
Okay.
As we consider the city's budget as a whole. Right now, what we're going to do is just focus on your budget as it's before us. You know, we'd like to maybe see the supporting documents for the additional revenue that could be generated and recognize that some of these are hard costs. We'll talk with the budget director about getting those and making sure that those things are in the budget. But by and large, I do have to say your budget is in line with your proposal, and that's a pretty good thing. So, but we do appreciate the work that you do for the city, certainly filling in on some of the safety initiatives downtown and having presence that's been very visible has been certainly noted by the general public and certainly appreciated. But before I do disband us, I do want to turn it over to the committee for one more round of questions. I just didn't want to get too far into the weeds into a bill that we're not considering before us here today.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Boyd, did you have any additional questions? No. Alderwoman Schweitzer?
Thank you all so much for being in front of us today. I have several people from your department who live in my ward, so I appreciate your presentation and the work that you all do. I am interested, first of all, thank you for coming with a recommendation for where you can find more revenue. Because oftentimes the ask comes in, but no, where would you suggest this comes from? You know, that's not always part of it. So thank you for doing that. A lot of my questions were answered. I do see how many more people would you ideally like to be hiring into the office?
I'm budgeted for, as we speak, for 170. I would love to have 180. I could run the sheriff's department like a well-oiled machine if I had 180. If you'd give me 190, I'd be tickled pink. Before I came to office, and they were almost at 200 deputies. Right. And with all the stuff going on, and Alderwoman Carr, I'm being pulled because of what's going on in our city. I'm being pulled by everybody. Right. I need security. I need security. I need security. I don't have enough guys. I don't have enough bodies to cover all the asks that I'm getting these days because our police department is short.
Would you say, Sheriff, that most of your deputies are also working secondary?
That is what they do. They work all day for me, and then in order for them to make extra money,
Right.
they work what we call secondary.
Right, because I don't see any overtime in the
No,
budget.
They won't, they won't pay us overtime. That's another issue. I can't pay we get paid comp time.
Sure. In the budget from fiscal year 2023, as it kind of winds down, are you anticipating having unspent funds from anywhere? What are you thinking?
No,
Okay,
I don't think so.
okay.
Especially in our personnel part of it, unspent funds. So with our downtown detail that we do, we pay them out of our budget, and we do not get reimbursed. The
Out of
parking.
salary budget?
Correct. Our parking detail that we're doing for all the garages, for the treasurer's office, I invoice them, and they do pay us back in a check, and it goes directly back into the payroll budget.
That's not secondary, but it's
It's just extra details.
extra details.
Correct. But the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that we do usually from May until December, that comes out of our payroll budget.
What would you say is the breakdown of staff time for deputies in terms of percentage spent at various parts of the job, whether it's courts or whether it's evictions or whether, what would you say would be the time breakdown?
That's a good question, Ann. I don't know. The people who are more concentrated in doing their jobs are the people that work in the courts. And that's because they bring prisoners in every day. We have to process them, and we sit before a judge, and sometimes that takes hours. We start at 8 o'clock and 8:30 in the morning, and they go through court, and we get over into the afternoon, and they bring in all of these prisoners that we've had locked up all day. And sometimes we go into 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. So that group of folks who work in the courtrooms, they work the most hours, concentrated hours.
But there's a lot of extra details, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I look forward to getting a little bit more information about the pay raises and where you think that money, how that will all work out. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you so much for your time.
Alderwoman Saunier.
Yeah, I think that similar to what we said, obviously we have to look into those pay raises and what that is. I have a question, comment, maybe bringing something to your attention. So I feel like I've seen a blurring of boundaries between the sheriff's office and political lines. I've observed it myself and seen things. I don't know if, it's something that I want to just bring to your attention and make sure you're aware of, because we're talking about increasing the pay, and obviously all those things are specific to the office and the operation, but I've heard of instances where, business owners might have felt intimidated by people within the sheriff's department if they had like a sign of support in someone's yard, and other things. I haven't, it was during a hectic season, but it's behavior that I don't think is appropriate. And I just want to make sure as we're having these conversations that I do, I think I want to make sure I'm honoring being integrity and speaking to that. Again, I'm not saying that any of that is to your doing or that you're even aware of some of everything that's been going on, but I feel like I know that I have witnessed that blurring, and I think I have seen some things step outside of boundaries that I think are appropriate.
Well, first of all, I think I would ask you to be a little more specific, because this sheriff is not going to do anything that I don't have permission to do, that I don't have the liberty to do. And as a political position, there's a whole lot of stuff that I can do as a politician, and I do everything that I need to do in order to answer to the people that put me here. And so whatever your lines are blurring and all that kind of stuff, you have to explain to me what that is. Specifically.
Yeah, so specifically, obviously, we're all candidates in office and we're all elected currently, but, having someone use their sheriff position or show a badge or something while they're telling a business owner, hey, this should not be here, this needs to be removed, and what is there is a yard sign. I don't know how I could be more specific than that unless you want me to name like the
Yeah,
specific instance.
I do, because I don't believe none of that's been done on my watch. Anybody wearing a badge, tell somebody that they can't put a sign in somebody's yard, that hasn't come to me, because I wouldn't tolerate it. I wouldn't tolerate it. I play fair, I play just. You don't know me. She do, he do, some of the others do. But I'm a straight up, honest, and just guy. I don't do nothing that would blemish my integrity in any kind of way. I'm a preacher and a Christian, and I'm not going to do anything to embarrass him or my church or my family. So I don't, if it's something that you see I'm doing wrong, all you got to do is say, hey,
Again, I'm
Ryan,
not saying that it's you. It's not meant to be a personal attack. You're just in leadership, but you have a bunch of people under your purview that could be doing all kinds of
well,
things. So I'm just
and in that
bringing-
case, if it's somebody that's under my leadership, then somebody need to come to me. I'm the leader and say, hey, Vern.
Okay, call to order, call to order.
Yeah.
That's not the conversation. We're talking about the budget, and so we need to stay on task.
Please.
I mean, I think it's a little relevant
No,
since we're talking about
this is
pace,
not-
but
this is
I
not
just wanted to
good.
bring it to your attention, and
No,
I've done that,
that's
so that's
something
fine.
that you probably should do outside of this, but this is about his budget. So where are we with the budget?
That was my question, just bringing that to your attention. Thank you.
Okay, so that's not.
Thank
the
you,
budget.
Alderman Boyd. Yeah, that kind of stuff you can walk into my office and tell me.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. All right, Alderman Aldridge.
I would just say echo about the pay increase. I heard whispers of it. I didn't know that it was a 10% increase. So, but we already did bring that up, so I'll make sure I talk with you offline about it. And questions how we can, I think everybody definitely want to support the sheriffs, understanding that they are also double dutying, doing stuff on Wash Ave, but I think like the Madam Chairwoman said, how do we, we want to make sure we're fiscally responsible in supporting people, but also not having to come back and look at this budget and say, oops, we messed up, especially now knowing on record that it was more than at least what I thought it was going to be, so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And then in the meantime, if you want to get us those additional revenue conversations, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you. And that concludes our budget
Fast.
in,
The chapter is 57.220. It gives the judges the authority to appoint how many people.
Would you send it to us, please?
but yeah, just if you don't mind sending that to us and your interpretation of the authority there. And then, Sheriff, if it's customary, that review, and it's not working out for you, then I recommend that you deal with it out directly with the judges. With that, we will conclude.
Announcements.
Do we have announcements?
Okay.
Oh, that's right. We do have a public announcement. We're having a public, would you like to make the announcement, Alderman Aldridge?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, absolutely. So budget, with being on record, we have a public hearing open to the public today from 4 to 6 in Alderwoman Sonia Ward at
The Golden Record.
the Golden Record, and the address is
2720.
2720. And then Cherokee, 2720 Cherokee. And then this Saturday, we will be heading north at 10 o'clock, meeting at Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club to also have input from the community on the budget
At 10 a.m.
at 10 a.m.
Thank you. Okay, and this concludes the Budget and Public Employees Committee hearing. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no objections, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.